Politics, sponsored by the Dallas Examiner. I am Christy Thomas, the coordinator for tonight's event. Tonight, I want to give the candidates and the audience some housekeeping guidelines to ensure that the forum moves smoothly so we can provide a space that is safe and conducive to learn about each candidate. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes for your opening and closing statements and 1 minute to answer any question from the moderator and the audience. Our guest time speaker today is Anthony Marshall. If you would raise your hand. He will provide a placard to inform you of your time and the time you have left to answer any questions. Candidates, this time should be spent talking about how you will implement your plan and goals for the seat if you are elected. Your time should not be spent talking about your opponent and their shortfalls or their issues. Please remain respectful throughout the forum and respect the space that has been donated to us for the purpose of educating our community on political candidates. Now, to the audience. We're so thankful for your presence. We ask that you formulate your questions where it pertains to all candidates. You will be allowed 1 minute to ask your question, and only one question can be asked to allow time for others in the audience to ask their questions. Again, please be respectful to prevent any interruptions that could cause us to run out of time and not hear from each candidate listed to speak tonight. The Dallas Examiner has been presenting Monday Night Politics, Meet the Candidate, for 15 years prior to major elections. I want to stress that all candidates are invited through email invitation. The Dallas Examiner does not endorse candidates. We could not do this alone. Our sponsors are nonprofit organizations, too many to name, all the Black sororities and fraternities, the NAACP chapter, the Links, and the African American Museum. Our moderator for tonight is Eric Wilson. Eric served on the Dallas City Council and is very familiar with city government and the issues in our community. Lastly, please silence your phone, and video recording is prohibited for this event. On behalf of Molly Belt, the Dallas Examiner, we would like to thank you again for attending Monday Night Politics, Meet the Candidate. This forum will be streamed live on Facebook. Thank you. Last but not least, the audience. When you have a question, you can come down here and I'll present a microphone so you can ask your question. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We at a funeral? Or what? I mean, I know it's cold outside. It's kind of warming up a little bit. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. My name is Eric with the K. Wilson, and I am your moderator for tonight. I had about a 7-minute speech that I was going to do before, but due to the fact that we have about a gazillion candidates that we need to get through tonight, I'm going to be real short because you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from the candidates. So at this point in time, I just have a quick note, if I can get our first set of candidates. Representative Victoria Neva Credo. Yeah. I try. I spent all day doing that too. And Nathan John. All right. Before we begin, are there any other elected officials who'd like to pay tribute to this? If you would, this is not your campaign season. If you would, just please raise your hand so we acknowledge you. All right. Thank you. And you may be seated. All right, you have 2 minutes for your opening speech, and then after that you have 1 minute to answer for each question. Audience members, I know we said that we gave you a minute to ask your question, but let's go ahead and cut that down. I'm gonna help you out just a little bit, because I know some people will try to give us a BC, behind the scenes, anthology, history lesson before they ask the question. So let me go ahead and help you out with the front part. It either happened before or it's going to happen afterwards. So now that we have that history part done, ask your question, okay? If you are too long in asking your question, I will ask you question, and then question, okay? All right, ready? Yes. All right. So we'll begin with you, Representative.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much to the Dallas Examiner for the opportunity to be here with y'all. My name is Victoria Neavigliado, and I serve as state representative for District 107. A little bit of background on me. I was born and raised right here in Dallas. I grew up in Pleasant Grove, and my parents taught me, both my dad and my mom, the importance of education, but also they told me, don't forget where you came from. So I used to tag along with my dad to civil rights organization and learn about injustices in our community, which is why I decided to become an attorney. I went to an HBCU, Tech Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and then decided to run for office when I saw an incumbent, and we ran against a Republican incumbent back in 2016 who was voting against the interest of our community, had $1 million in the bank, and people told us we'd do it, but we knew that we had to fight back to bring change for our community. So we flipped that seat in 2016, and I've served in the Texas House for 4 legislative sessions. A lot of the work that I have done has been focused on issues that disproportionately impact women and fighting back against Governor Abbott's agenda and his discriminatory legislation. I'll share with you some legislation that I've passed, and then also some of the fights that we've had against DEI, against attacks against our community left and right, and especially racial profiling laws that we fought hard against and tried to defeat during the legislative session. But one, I passed, my landmark piece of legislation is called the Lavinia Masters Act, which was named after a woman. And I will say, we learned recently that this is the first law in the country that has been named after a Black woman. Lavinia Masters was raped at knife point here in Dallas after somebody crawled through her window. She went to get her rape kit tested, and her rape kit sat on a shelf untested for more than 20 years before it finally got tested. We passed a law, got $50 million from the Texas budget, and have now had thousands of untested rape kits, bringing justice to women survivors in our state. I see that my time is up, but we'd be honored to earn your vote.
Ready to go? Yeah. Thank you. I want to thank Ms. Molly Belt for putting these forums on, for all of you for being engaged. Very important decisions we're making here tonight. I am Senator Nathan Johnson. I represent this district presently, state senator from Dallas County. When people say, what part of Dallas County? I say it's all over the place. It's one of the goofiest, most gerrymandered areas. There's blobs everywhere. But the thing that we all have in common is we all need some basic things. We all need education. We all need electricity. We all need healthcare. And those are the things that I've dedicated myself to as long as I've been in office, alongside the other promise that I made when I beat the right-wing Tea Party that Don Huffines in 2018. I promised everybody I would fight like hell against the mania, the extremism on the right, and at the same time apply myself, stay up late at night, get up early every morning and figure out what do we need and how can we deliver it. That is what I've done. That's why over the past 3 sessions I've passed around 100 bills. Last session I passed 47 bills. There's some people who think that passing bills means you're not a real Democrat. Well, I've also been in trouble for calling the Republicans irresponsible, spiteful, lazy, unimaginative, and sanctimonious. So it's not really an issue about whether or not you fight, it's how you fight and whether or not you deliver. I got the first ever tax incentive for the Minority Opportunity District in the history of Texas for Senate District 16 and throughout the state. I got 200,000 low-income people health insurance for the first time in the history of the Affordable Care Act. We've moved Medicaid expansion almost across the line, but the Republicans still won't do it. That's why I found other ways to get it done. I've passed an SEL bill. I got infant hearing, Alzheimer's, youth mental health, clean water, clean air. We do everything in my office because all of us need all of these things. I hope we have some questions here tonight because the work we're doing is critically important. I'm glad you're here so we can have this conversation. I'd be proud to earn your vote. Thank you.
All right. So I will ask a few questions, 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So after they've given their opening speech, I want you to think about what questions that you want to ask specifically to their position. So we'll start with an easy question. Warm-up question. So what is motivating you to run for re-election?
Oh, because there's so much opportunity in Texas. It's got more opportunity than any state in the nation. We have great natural resources. We have a young, energetic, industrial people. We've got all sorts of great institutions and great schools and world-class healthcare, and yet we have 14% poverty. It's an uneven distribution of opportunity. It's an uneven distribution of resources. And if we can do the moral thing and bring more people into opportunity, we also will leap forward with all that potential we have in this state. It's the possibility of wasting our advantages and the possibility of capitalizing on them that really drives me every day to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to participate and lead a good life here.
Thank you. Representative. Question to you is, what is motivating you to run for this position?
Thank you so much. So there is so much at stake with the threat of a Trump presidency looming over us when we have a woman who is having to travel to another state to obtain reproductive rights, and we know that our abortion laws impact women of color in a different way. When we have Governor Abbott attacking people of color, taking away diversity, equity, and inclusion from higher education, and we know that they're trying to go after private business and other governmental entities as well. There is too much at stake to not stand up and fight when it matters the most. Every single vote that we take matters, and we can pass big laws and at the same time stand up and fight when it matters the most. I want to give the voters of Senate District 16 a choice about the type of leadership that we want. Do we want somebody who's going to cave to Dan Patrick whenever key critical issues facing all of us come before us, or do we want somebody who's going to fight? And that's what we want to take our fight from the House to the Senate, because there is too much at stake.
All right, Rain, this question is yours. Since we talked about critical issues, next question. The issue of gun control is a topic of debate across the nation. What is your position on gun control, and how do you plan to balance Second Amendment rights with public safety?
Thank you. One of the big issues that we were trying to advocate for is a law to raise the age to purchase an assault rifle to 21. It was a key priority for the Uvalde families who would come every single week to lobby for that legislation. We in the House fought to try to move that legislation forward, and it actually got a vote out of committee. But the fact is, and the contrast is here, when that vote, an amendment in the Senate came up, for the senator voted with Republicans to block that amendment from even getting a vote, which is not acceptable. We have children dying. We saw the Department of Justice report see how law enforcement failed these families because they did not have the courage to go in there where somebody had an AR-15. This is a matter of life and death in some issues. We cannot take the easy way out when these issues impact all of us. And so we can change our gun laws there. We need to close. We need to have expanded background checks. We need to close the gun show loophole. There are lots of solutions that have passed in other states that we can get done in Texas by building coalitions.
Thank you. Senator, I'll read the question. The issue of gun control is a topic of debate across the nation. What is your position on gun control, and how do you plan to balance Second Amendment rights with public safety?
Thank you for the question. It is an important one. It's also an important one with regard to the contest between me and my opponent. I'm going to start right where he left off. I actually joint authored a bill that contained exactly that requirement to raise the purchase age to 21. I authored other bills, including red flag laws, co-authored other bills. I've been supportive of the entire mainstream awareness that we have in this state that we need gun safety laws so that we can finally start moving things in the right direction. There's no question. As for that particular vote, I voted with 9 other of the 10 of the 12 Democrats voted on a procedural rule. It was to uphold a parliamentary ruling as to the germaneness. The amendment was never up. I support the amendment. I filed a bill with that amendment in it. What would I do to make things better? Red flag laws, background checks, cooling off periods, do not sell lists, all of the 5, 6, 7 different things that are in this omnibus legislation, of which I am a joint author and outspoken advocate.
May I respond to that? Because the germaneness
Yes,
argument.
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. All right. Now, we'll open it up for audience participation. This is your time to ask questions. Please step forward. Don't be shy. I can see what you're thinking. I know you want to ask it. Come one. Anybody rush your all at once? Mm-hmm.
Hello, good evening. My name is LaDonna Colon. And really short, a lot of us were deeply impacted by the Uvalde event. It was very sad. And I was just really curious about what was her response going to be, that's all.
Good question. Both can answer.
Can they both answer?
Thank you. So his excuse for blocking that amendment was he said that it was not germane. Germane means essentially in the rules that it's not relevant to the bill. And so to me, that's one of the worst excuses to be used. Explain that to the Uvalde families, that because the amendment didn't have proper language or whatever it is, you still have to fight for our community left and right. It does not matter, and that's the big difference between us. With all of these issues at stake, this district has also been substantially redrawn. It is now over 70% people of color. He does not understand the threat and the urgency that some of these laws that are passing are impacting us. Otherwise, he would have voted the right way, and there were other Democrats who tried to get that amendment passed in the Senate. He could have voted the right way for all of us so that we could try to raise the age. Even if that amendment were not going to pass in the Senate, you still fight no matter what to try to get it pushed so that those families can get a vote to raise the age to purchase an assault rifle. Thank you for that.
Senator?
Yeah, I'll tell you another distinction between us is honesty in delivering to you messages about what we're talking about here. Either she doesn't understand that vote or she's being dishonest with you. That vote was not to keep the amendment off. I would have voted for the amendment. I myself, I offer non-germane amendments all the time. It's a great way to make a point. Roland Gutierrez is my friend. I signed on to many of his amendments. We were voting, the ruling had been made that that amendment wasn't germane to the bill it was trying to attach to. If I vote to kill the rules of the Senate, I can't use the rules of the Senate to kill Republican bills, and I use those same rules to kill a Brian Hughes bill a week later. I use those same rules to defend my bills from points of attack. Those are rules of the institution. The amendment, all for it. That's why it's part of the bill I filed. As for fighting, look, if you want to talk about different issues like reproductive rights, I'm always on the side of Planned Parenthood women. She's got a couple of bad votes there. She's been with Ken Paxton on the environment and Dan Patrick on telling what you to do at basketball games. There's not a question about who's a fighter in this race.
All right. All right, candidates, just a friendly reminder. I love you. You love me. We're all one big happy family. So we're going to keep our answers to the question and not towards one another. We want to show each other respect and love in this place. All right. Just a reminder. That goes for you too, future candidates. Okay? All right.
The timekeeper has a question.
Timekeeper has a question. Timekeeper comes up, ask questions.
I don't know. Can anybody answer? Today is the anniversary, would have been the 51st anniversary of Roe. I would like to know what you, as the state senator, would like to do or going to do about the current situation in Texas.
That question is for Senator.
Thank you for the question. I'm the only legislator in Texas to have filed 4 bills to try to restore abortion rights and try to beat back the further attempts to prevent women from even leaving the state of Texas from abortion care. I found, you all heard about these local abortion travel bans, where these cities near the border of Texas are passing laws that says if you help someone drive through on our roads, we will arrest you, we will fine you. This is some crazy Orwellian stuff. I'm the one who filed a bill to stop it. I filed a bill to erase the pre-Roe abortion laws. I filed a bill to legalize medication abortion consistent with the FDA. Did I think they would pass? No. I knew they wouldn't even get a hearing, but damn it, we've got to put these on paper. We've got to get press interviews because we've got to keep these issues alive and start turning the tide back in the direction of reproductive freedom for women in Texas.
Representative.
Thank you so much. I have worked alongside as a member of the Women's Health Caucus. We have been fighting left and right for women to restore our access to reproductive health care. And I want to recognize Representative Toni Rose for her leadership on expanding Medicaid for women is going to make a huge impact because we know that it was only 6 months. And so she was able to get that a feat that was not easy to do. We need women to have more access to health care, period. And so that's going to make a big difference, whether it's using the rules, using amendments, anytime there are attacks, we have to stand up and fight when our reproductive rights are under attack. We know that Republicans are trying to determine our right to control our own destiny. So from the ballot box to the Texas House and the Texas Senate, we have to use everything that we can, because these are fights that were had 50 years ago in order for us to have reproductive rights. So I'm honored, and we want to take that same fight that we have had in the House fighting for reproductive rights to the Senate.
Any other questions? Get y'all warmed up just a little bit. Can we come to you just a little bit? Maybe they'll have questions. All right. Let me ask this question. One that's near and dear to me. Climate change and environmental conservation are pressing concerns. What policies and measures would you support to address climate change and to protect our natural resources in Texas?
Thank you. That's a great question. What we need to look at is also solar and wind energy, especially when there are concerns about the oil and gas, industry here in Texas. So we have wind farms that we can look at in West Texas. What sort of incentives can we provide for solar energy on homes, while at the same time balancing that families are not taken advantage of? Because we have heard that there are some companies as well that try to put liens on a home if an individual cannot pay it off. So we need to look at balanced policy with respect to, because climate, it's an issue that is facing not just our current generation, but our future generations. And so we've got to look at different policies with respect to that, particularly solar and wind.
Senator?
I've probably spent 1,000 hours in the last 2 years working on the grid. Climate change is an issue for the grid. As we came out of the disaster storm where at least 200, maybe 800 people died and we suffered $200 billion of damage, there's this huge emphasis on having enough power right now, and traditionally that has meant gas-fired power plants. You know what, still today, to some extent it does. If we properly regulate natural gas, it can be pretty clean, but it's nowhere near as good as renewable energy like solar, wind. Even nuclear power is very, very clean. Small modular nukes. Batteries are online. What I tried to do last session is stop the Republicans from killing the renewable industry, and if you read any articles on this, we succeeded. We have preserved Texas's lead role in wind and solar, and at the same time, we are going to balance that with an adequate development of new gas-fired generation hooked up to batteries, hooked up to wind farms. We really can have a clean energy future. We've just got to be smart about it. It takes a ton of time, and I love spending time on it, and I'm glad it's a priority for everybody on the Democratic side in Texas.
Audience question? They're just gonna leave me up here like this? Okay, I see. All right, yes.
Okay, this is to both senators. Earlier, the topic of rape kits was brought up, and I wanted to ask, do y'all think there is a possibility for rape crimes to be prosecuted with like a more equivalent punishment, besides like, 6 months or a year, like to where we can get to the future of more 10 or 20 years to like be more, fair to the victims?
Thank you, and that's a great question. I created locally a sexual violence task force with subject matter experts that's specifically focusing on this, and I'm excited about you and your future because I know that you're studying politics and we need more young people to be engaged in the process, so thank you for being here. So yes, as we're analyzing everything, we realize, okay, the rape kits are not getting tested. They've been sitting there for years because of the Lavinia Masters Act that I passed, as well as a series of other bills. Rape kits are now getting tested and being submitted for testing within 90 days. And so as that evidence is being processed, not only are you catching repeat offenders, but you're also giving evidence that allows people who are wrongfully accused off to not be charged with those cases. And so that's why the DNA testing is so important. And so as long as we get more of that evidence, then those rape crimes can be prosecuted. And the fact is, we as women have been underrepresented in the House, which is why I have focused, and in the legislature period. We have no Democratic woman in all of North Texas in the Senate.
Senator?
Thank you. I appreciate that question. And first of all, the Lavinia Masters Act that Representative Niave passed is a great bill. It is a landmark piece of legislation. For some of the reasons that she was just saying, you asked about increased penalties, which generally Texas loves doing, and so there probably is a way to get that done, and it should be done. What I think is more important about the testing the rape kits, we've seen in studies of what alters criminal behavior, the severity of the punishment has less effect on criminal behavior than the certainty that you're going to get caught. So the good thing about the rape kit testing is it does provide additional evidence. We are more likely to catch people, and that will do more, I think, to prevent rape crimes than people being in jail longer. But you know what? If there's not parity already in sentencings for a heinous crime like that, there absolutely should be. So I would support it.
Senator? Question? I have one. Access to affordable housing is a challenge for many Texans. What strategies do you have in mind to address this issue and ensure affordable housing options for all residents?
It's a huge issue. We talk about all Texas advantages. One of the things we've had as an advantage is affordable housing for a long time, but time's up. People are moving here, 1,000 people a day, and it's no longer affordable to live in many parts of Texas. One thing that we can do is try to keep the existing stock of affordable housing in the stock of affordable housing. I actually passed legislation to do that previous session, and I actually worked with the Texas Department of Housing to implement another one of my bills just through their regulatory people. Make sure we don't lose any of our affordable housing. I've been working with developers to try to put together a $2 billion fund that I proposed to incentivize the construction of more affordable housing. We find that the thing that leads to homelessness more than anything else, and there's research all over the place on this, is unaffordable housing and poverty. So we need to address poverty. We need to address the lack of affordable housing. Those are two things that I'm actively engaged with the affordable housing community in trying to find ways to make more available at affordable prices. Also, state assistance to local government rent campaigns. Why aren't we giving some of that $32 billion surplus to local governments?
Thank you. Representative?
Thank you. Right now, there are some families that are a paycheck away from not being able to make rent. Evictions in Dallas have skyrocketed. There was a local ordinance by Dallas to try to give tenants a little bit of extra time to work with their landlords so they would not be evicted. I serve on the Business and Industry Committee in the Texas House. We fought very hard to try to kill a House version of a bill to preempt ordinances like that from Dallas to try to protect tenants. We were trying to explain to our colleagues how this is going to be devastating for our cities in our area where people could be evicted without getting that extra time. While I'm fighting in the House to try to kill that legislation alongside my colleagues, Nathan Johnson voted for that version of the Senate bill that is against renters. That's the difference between us, with all due respect to him. Here's the contrast in the votes. When it matters the most, are we gonna be protecting tenants who are just trying to not get evicted? That's the difference.
So are we gonna have
Thank
a
you,
debate?
thank you.
If we're gonna have a debate, should I respond to that?
Again, I love you, you love
Because I'd be
me.
happy to respond.
We're
to
going
that.
to speak on the topic and not towards the next time I will, just so we understand, the next time we do it, you're gonna forfeit your question, you'll forfeit your time, and we'll move on.
Are we
Even?
allowed to show the contrast in the vote?
You can talk about the topic, answer the question, do not direct it towards your opponent. You will lose your question, lose your time. All hearts and minds clear? All right. All right. All right. Did you answer the affordable housing for both of you? All right. You did? Yours?
Yeah, yes, I did.
You did? Okay,
Yes, I did.
cool. All right. Next question. Representative, yours. Texas faces challenges related to transportation infrastructure, particularly in urban areas. How do you plan to address these challenges and improve transportation systems across the state, such as the high-speed rail?
Thank you for asking that. So right now I represent District 107, which includes parts of East Dallas, Garland, and Mesquite. For any of you who live in that area, y'all know how the traffic congestion on 635 is. When I first got in office in 2017, we fought for more funding for the 635 project, the LBJ East, which runs from 80 30 and 80 all the way to 635 and 75, and you'll see that there are lots of expanded roads now, and so I helped get some of that funding and fight for funding for that. With respect to high-speed rail, we need to modernize our transportation system. As a member in the Dallas delegation, a lot of us throughout the years have fought to try to protect that opportunity to connect to Dallas, to Houston, because we know that the high-speed rail opportunity cost a lot less than some flights, and we want to make sure that we protect that. And so we have been successful so far at protecting that opportunity for the high-speed rail, but there are always attempts to try to prevent it from going into, or legislation to try to block it, but we've got to fight back.
Thank you.
The issue with transportation at a local level is at a local level. One of the things about being a senator is you represent 950,000 people in multiple cities. The problems we have right now are that high-speed rail and other forms of transportation are not the subject of uniform agreement among our different cities. So one of the things you can do as a senator is get all the people from Irving and Addison and Farmers Branch and Dallas and Balch Springs and all the different areas of Dallas into a room together to talk with the people at DART, to talk with the people at TxDOT, to try to have a coordinated approach. Because if you get 23 of the 24 miles, you have a very long walk at the end of your ride. So it's going to be intermodal, multimodal. You're going to have last mile transportation to the extent you do have high-speed rail. What if there's another 17 blocks at the end of that? You can have programs with local governments. Again, I'm a big fan with using state money to fund local programs because they can best reach the people to deliver those transportation needs. High-speed rail, it's dead. It might come back. I'll support it if it does like I did last time.
Question? All that, you don't have a question? Okay, all right. Some good information, that was some good. Okay, all right. Senator. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on our state. How do you plan to support recovery efforts to strengthen healthcare infrastructure and to prepare for future public health emergencies?
You know, I wish we had expanded Medicaid already in the state, but we haven't. We have the highest uninsured rate in the nation. The COVID experience exposed the frailties and the weaknesses in our healthcare system at every level, but most particularly with people who don't have insurance, who don't have access to healthcare. We need to expand Medicaid. It has been a signature issue for me. It used to be something people didn't talk about because they were embarrassed. It's now the front page of every paper. We're so close. But we're not there because it's still being blocked by Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, and we are going to overcome that. In the meantime, we've got to work with the Health and Human Services Agency. Something I've been a big proponent of is actually paying people who work for the state of Texas enough money that we can keep them in their jobs, because our human infrastructure at our agencies is rendering us incapable of delivering the level of healthcare service that people need. We don't have enough people, we don't have enough IT systems. I'm involved with the Sunset Commission and the Health and Human Services Agency and federal authorities to try to keep federal money. I went to Washington, I wrote the letter that the Senate and the House sent to try to keep our federal money coming, because there's a lot we need to do in healthcare.
So when COVID hit, you could look at a map and see the zip codes where COVID numbers were higher, because a lot of our community did not have access to the shot. The vaccine. So I organized locally during the COVID pandemic with some of our colleagues as well as the county health officials, and we had lines and lines of people lining up to get their COVID vaccine. It takes not just passing laws, but also being in the community when it matters the most and when it was life and death for many of our neighbors, and so we want to continue to do that work. We also need to change policies at the state level. I chair the County Affairs Committee, and as the chair of that, we passed multiple pieces of bills getting local provider participation funds, which helps draw down Medicaid dollars to help pay for healthcare services in our local hospitals like Parkland Hospital.
Thank you. All right. So now we come to the time of our closing. You'll have 2 minutes to give your closing speech. And with that, one of the things that I was always impressed upon candidates, as you're closing, tell us how we can get in touch with you. We have more questions, make sure, because candidates always forget that part, so I just want to throw it out there. So with that, you went first, Representative Senator, you have first.
Thank you again. I really appreciate y'all taking this race so seriously. I certainly do. As far as access, I would love for you all to come to our office hours. The first Friday of every month, we have open office hours. In fact, I have one, I believe it's this Friday. I hope you'll come in. We get great ideas. I once had a pregnant school teacher come in and bring to us the information that I actually didn't know, that school teachers don't have paid parental leave. So I filed a bill to get paid parental leave for teachers. It didn't pass because vouchers killed just about everything else. So please do come from us. That's where a lot of our best ideas come from. The community comes to me, we go to the community, so do get in touch with us. As far as what I want you to take out of this, I want you to understand that Senate District 16 has people that have needs. They have it in healthcare, education, electricity, and everything else. And the work that we do there matters to them. The work that I do there, that my excellent staff does there, has managed to get social and emotional learning in schools. It's managed to get asthma medication so a single mother doesn't have to take off work to go to give her kid an EpiPen because now the teacher can do it. It matters to people with Alzheimer's. It matters to people whose electricity goes out and they don't have clean water. All of this matters. It's also about fighting. It's also about standing up for your rights. I have the whole time I'm there, and believe me, I will keep doing it because I think we're on the verge of something here. The Republicans are in the middle of an infighting session. They're primarying each other left and right over Ken Paxton. They're primarying each other over vouchers. It's a crumbling moment of weakness. It is a time for us to, in a unified voice, stand behind the principles and values that I think are pretty common, even between the people on this stage, among Democrats. Not to be wasting our resources and diluting our messages with phony, dishonest attacks, but to act as one mind, as one force, to take them out. Let's let our vision be the vision for the future of Texas. That's my goal in office.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here and to share the different vision that we have for our district. I would be honored to earn your vote. Our website is victoriafortexas.com. We also are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok as well. And so for us, there is too much at stake to not stand up and fight every single time when our communities are under attack. When you have Governor Abbott threatening us for, including even in people on the border with laws that are racial profiling laws that are going to give law enforcement the power to stop any of us and question us about how American we are. We've got to fight back to protect our reproductive rights, to protect so many different communities that are under attack. I'm from here, born and raised. I understand the needs and why we cannot be on the sidelines. Every single vote matters, and we want to do everything that we can to earn your vote. I would love to come to you. Please connect with me. Do not hesitate to reach out. But for us right now, as we're having these fights, you can ask any of our, my colleagues in the House about what it means to stand up. Even if when we know that they are trying to hold us down in different ways, whether there was legislation to try to, for example, also get rid of historically underutilized businesses, that legislation died. There were numerous pieces of legislation that we helped kill along the way because we know the impact for our communities. And so I'm honored to be here. I thank you for your time, and we can be reached at victoriafortexas.com.
Thank you. All right, with that, let's give our candidates a round of applause. Thank you. You may exit. All right, with that, we'll have our next set of candidates. Representative District 109, State Representative District 109, Aisha, is it Aisha? Aisha, practice that too. Aisha Davis and Victoria Walton. Aisha, you will have all the questions. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. You have 2 minutes open.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
So my name is Aisha Davis. I'm running for Texas House District 109. I currently serve on the Texas State Board of Education representing District 13, which encompasses Tarrant and Dallas counties, almost nearly all of House District 109. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of the current House member, Representative Carl Sherman, as well as Senator Royce West and many of our local elected officials in the area. Some of the things I've been able to accomplish on the State Board of Education: within my very first term, I was elected in 2018. I was able to lead the successful passing of African American Studies as a statewide elected course. Now we have thousands of students all across the state of Texas that are enrolled in the course, and we are working on Native American Studies as our next ethnic studies course. I was also able to work with Senator Royce West to start an internship so that underrepresented students know how to manage multi-billion-dollar portfolios like we do with our Texas Permanent School Fund. I worked with Representative Retta Bowers in passing the Texas Crown Act to make sure we don't have discrimination against our students and they're free to wear their hair however they would love to. And I also fought against harmful language when there were attempts to rechange the phrase slave trade to involuntary relocation. So these are some of the things I've been able to do to work across the aisle. Nearly all of those things had a unanimous vote. So I've been able to learn to work across the aisle to get things done for our public schools. And these are some of the things that I want to get done at the House. So again, thank you so much for having me.
So with that, thank you. So I'll ask the first question. So what inspired you to run for the office of State Rep 109?
Yeah, so on the State Board of Education, I've been able to accomplish some really good things, but we work within the scope of the law. So we have to make sure that we have laws that allow us to make decisions for our public schools. But I've seen so many attacks on public education at the legislature. I've seen attacks against DEI in higher education. I've seen attacks with critical race theory in our K-12 schools. I've seen so many negative attempts to make sure our schools don't have the resources that we need. And I've seen attempts to make sure teachers don't get the pay raises that they deserve. So I want to make sure that I'm a voice working the same way I did at the State Board of Education to make sure we have stronger schools and stronger communities.
So staying on that thing, well, what steps would you take to address those issues of education funding and improving the quality of education in the state?
So I've been able to work with legislators a lot in my role. And what I've observed is a lot of times there's a disconnect in knowing how schools actually function, what education funding is actually needed, and what happens when that funding is not there. So being a voice to know exactly what's happening in our public schools is first and foremost. Before I ever ran for any of these roles, I was a teacher. So understanding what really is going on in our public schools and the need is the first thing I want to bring to the table. And again, working across the aisle like I've been able to do at the State Board to make sure that we're focused more on schools than politics and getting the right things done for schools. So that's what I want to do to get things done.
Good. Question. Criminal justice reform is a topic of importance. What measures will you support to promote fairness and to ensure justice and equitable justice systems in the state of Texas?
Yes. So, and I know I'm talking about education, but I want to say this. When we talk about criminal justice reform, we have to start with public education and making sure that our students are receiving all the resources they need to improve their outcomes. And when you see these students that have some sort of indicator that they need a little extra help, identify that before they get caught up in that system, in that school to prison pipeline. So that's the very first thing I want to address. Through my conversations that I've had with Representative Sherman, one of the things that he said to me that was just astounding was that in the state of Texas, we are required to have air conditioning in our facilities that home our pets. But you're not required to have air conditioning in those facilities that house our folks going under, whatever correctional things they're going through. So when we talk about fairness, when we talk about making sure that our folks that are incarcerated have rights, we want to make sure that even though they are serving time, they still have human rights and human needs and that they deserve to have addressed.
All right. Those of you who are watching online, you have an opportunity to submit questions as well. I know as our audience present is warming up to ask questions.
Right.
Here's your opportunity, so I'll open the floor to our audience to ask questions.
Can you talk about the top 3 issues you're going to fight for House District 109, please?
Sure, of course. So first, education, of course, will be my priority. Something that I found out that is so unique and so dynamic about House District 109 is that we have more union members in our district than any other House district across Dallas County. So making sure that the folks that are working in House District 109 have access to health care, have opportunities to grow within their career, and that we have a strong pipeline to make sure that we keep those big numbers of union workers in that district. So definitely want to look at that. And economic development, we have a lot of opportunities for development in District 109, a lot of open space, a lot of folks who know how to get things done. So all of those different resources that we can use from the state level to improve District 109 will be things that cities all across Texas will be able to use when they think about improvement plans. So definitely education, definitely economic development, and definitely healthcare. We don't have any major healthcare systems in District 109. We don't have a Planned Parenthood as well. So making sure that we have those resources for our citizens.
Thank you, thank you. All right, switching gears just a little bit, we talked about one of our most vulnerable, and that is our youth. The other area that's our most vulnerable that needs a lot of attention and a lot of support is our elderly. How do you plan on making transportation available for the elderly who don't qualify for Medicaid but need to get to their medical appointment?
We have so many things that we need to talk about when it comes to our elderly population, making sure they have adequate retirement benefits. And this is all included within that, making sure they have access to get to where they need to be so that they can have health care, so they can get objects that they need, so that they can still have a full life. I plan to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to have all these deep discussions about our elderly, about our care, and about retirement, to make sure that these folks that have contributed so much to our communities for so many years can live comfortably now that it is their time to pass that torch on to others. So making sure we constantly, consistently have that conversation about retirement benefits and making sure that our elderly population is taken care of will definitely be very important to me. I do take care of my mother, and I see her and the concerns from her and her friends as they talk about the lack of resources and the things that they need. So I definitely want to prioritize that.
Thank you, thank you. Questions? All right, moving along. Talked about resources. Let's talk about an area or a group of individuals that need those such resources. What initiatives would you support to address the challenges of affordable housing and homelessness in your district and across the state?
It's so crucial to work with those local entities that understand the communities, that understands the needs, and understands how to best spend those resources to address homelessness, to address affordable housing. What I've seen consistently from the legislature is attacks on public entities, local entities, taking authority away from local city councils when we need to be investing in our local cities. So making sure we don't have further attempts to pull money away, rather have those conversations with our local elected officials who are the experts of those areas to figure out how we invest those funds to actually make that change.
All right, thank you. Question? Again, if you're online watching, we have someone monitoring your questions, so please ask your questions. So with that, we'll go to something that's near and dear to all of us. Texas is known for its energy resources when it works. How do you plan to balance the state's energy needs with environmental conservation and renewable energy initiatives?
So I want to start with this. We recently talked about science at the State Board of Education, and I have some colleagues that work in oil and gas. And they decided that they didn't want to include any information about climate change in Texas standards. So our students for the next 10 to 12 years will not learn much about climate change unless there is some legislative requirement for them to learn that. So that means this workforce that is going to have to be the ones that come up with these innovative changes using renewable energy, using clean energy, they won't receive that foundation in our Texas public schools. So that is one of the things that need to be addressed immediately, talking about the need to prepare our students for this innovative future. But when we talk about investments, there are actually both sides of the aisle that are invested in a clean future. We just need to have these conversations to talk about how it is necessary, especially when you have environmental injustice in our communities where you see a lot of these refineries. So these are a lot of those conversations across the aisle that I'm very excited to have.
All right, so I'll ask a question that I previously asked. The issue of gun control is a topic of debate. What is your stance on gun control, and how do you plan to balance Second Amendment rights with public safety?
I believe in gun ownership. I'm from very rural Mississippi, so I grew up in a family of hunters. So I believe in gun ownership, but I believe there is a responsibility that comes with that. I believe when you are 18 years old and unable to buy alcohol, I don't think you should be able to buy an assault rifle. And I've seen that too much in Texas, and I don't understand how you can justify that when you see what some of these 18-year-olds have been doing or thinking of doing. So when we talk about gun control, if we talk about something that we can all come together and agree with, we know 18-year-olds are not mentally responsible to have a weapon that powerful. So let's start with that conversation and move forward with broader gun control legislation, but I do believe in gun ownership, but I believe it comes with responsibility.
Question? We got a quiet crowd. Wish I had you on my class. All right, so with that, there is, I don't know if you know about it, but there is a glacier the size of Texas that is moving towards Texas, that is actually within Texas, that's not talked about. And that is water conservation. If you don't know, Texas is running the risk of not having enough water. So with that being said, Texas faces natural disaster, how do you plan to address issues of water scarcity and conservation in Texas, particularly in areas prone to drought?
That's an excellent question. So we do have water boards across Texas that are responsible for make sure we have that information and that data. So making sure that they're a part of these discussions and that they're a player at that table is going to be crucial if we think about conservation in the future and how we make sure that we do have resources for everyone. Texas is an amazing state. We have folks moving in all the time. So we have to make sure everything is sustainable for all the people that live here. So having them as a part of that conversation is so important, but again, it goes back to making sure we know how to utilize those resources and we have a strong workforce that understands the future of what we need to do to conserve that energy and make it sustainable for the future. So really preparing that future generation for that information and for that knowledge is going to be very key. But having those folks at the conversation table is going to be very important in making sure we make the right changes.
So water scarcity is also exacerbated by water contamination. What could you do on a statewide level to limit the amount of water contamination events that we have caused by negligent for-profit corporations, especially in Black and brown neighborhoods?
Absolutely. When you look at the trends of where you see a lot of this environmental injustice, it is mostly in Black and brown neighborhoods. So it's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. When we talk about contamination, especially that's caused by for-profit entities, you're going to have a lot of pushback, but that doesn't mean you stop fighting. I can tell you so many times folks told me, you will never pass this in Texas. You will never have African American studies in Texas. But when you have those crucial conversations and you bring key people to the table and you include the community and you encourage folks to come down and be a voice and we all do this together, you can move mountains. And that's some of the things that I plan to do in Austin. So I definitely, like I said, want to have those key players and those experts at the table so we can talk about it in a meaningful way and make those needed changes.
So with that, I'll ask this final question. So with that being said, you talked about key people, bringing the community together, so we know that the backbone of most communities is small businesses. How do you plan to support small businesses and promote economic growth in your district and across the state?
Yes, we have a lot of amazing small business in DeSoto. We have a lot of growth in DeSoto because of our small businesses. So of course I want to make sure we have that support. There's a lot of resources, a lot of financial resources and opportunities for small businesses. We have to just make sure that they're coming to our communities. So a part of that is making sure that legislation passes to give opportunities to small business. But another one is making sure that our business owners know about those opportunities. They know how to apply for them, and they have all the tools to be successful in those applications. So that's a twofold thing that I definitely want to work with my community on.
Well, with that being said, we'll give you 2 minutes for closing.
All right, again, thank you so much for listening to me tonight. I'm very, very excited for this opportunity. I do want to say there are some very tumultuous things going on down in Austin. We have so many attacks against public education, voting rights, healthcare, and I want to be a voice. Not just a voice to go down there and just say what's going on, but a voice for change, working across the aisle, working across the hallway with the Senate to make sure that these things do come to fruition. So you can reach out to me. I'm on social media. I have a website, AishaForTexas.com. Very excited to hear from you. I've been so happy to learn so much more about the district through this journey, and just so excited to work with you to see what more we can do together. One thing about the State Board of Education, I don't have an office, I don't have a staff. So I've worked with the community to get things done, and we have done so many things together. And that's exactly what I plan on doing at the House. So again, thank you so much for having me. This has been an exciting journey, and I thank you for the opportunity to serve.
State Representative District 100 candidates.
All right.
Incumbent Benton Jones. Sandra Crenshaw. Justice McFarland. Barbara Mallory Caraway. Please come to the stage. All right, seeing there are no other candidates, we will begin. Representative Jones.
All right, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Ms. Bell. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Again, my name is State Representative Benton Jones, and I have the honor and the distinct pleasure of currently serving as the State Representative for House District 100. I'm very excited about this opportunity to be able to run for my second term to the Texas House of Representatives, because I feel that our work is just getting started. And when I came before you today, when I came before you 2 years ago, I told you that I wanted to be able to bring stability to this seat. And stability started with, one, opening up a district office right here in Fair Park. Stability started with working on key issues that were important to House District 100, healthcare, our public education, working for equality and justice for all, also working to preserve our communities for the families that have raised their families in House District 100 for generations, and working to address those different issues. Stability includes getting Freshman of the Year and working to pass 29 pieces of legislation that are now law. That's stability. That's the work that I've started with as State Representative for House District 100. That's the work that I want to continue if elected, and that is what I'm asking for the votes, for the voters of House District 100 to continue to have me as their State Representative in House District 100. Thank you so much.
All right, with that being said, I ask you the question. So what is motivating you or inspiring you to run for re-election?
Well, as I started, there's still so much work to be done. And for people who are not familiar with the first part of my race, I decided to run for this office because parts of the district that I grew up in, parts of Oak Cliff, parts of South Dallas, West Dallas, and in East Dallas, are not getting the attention that other parts of Dallas are getting, and something needed to change with that. There's been a number of issues that I am looking forward to talking about tonight, whether we talk about housing, we talk about the state of public health, or just we talk about the condition of our roads and our streets and our schools. All those things require fighting right now, and I'm a person that has been that fighter and that has worked on behalf of House District 100, not just when I was elected or seeking office, but that is work that I've committed to my entire life.
Texas has a diverse population of varying perspectives. How do you plan to ensure the voices of all communities in your district are heard and represented?
Absolutely. Well, I think that my 20 years in navigating healthcare policy, executive leadership, and also working on behalf of House District 100 and communities like House District 100 has prepared me for this work. First, we have to be engaged with mobilizing our communities and being able to understand that House District 100, of its 200,000 residents, is majority represented by people of color. So at the front of that table, we have to have people of color at those conversations. One thing I think that is so important is navigating just the understanding of state government. A lot of people understand what's happening here locally and also see on the news what's happening federally, but very few know about state government and having to navigate that. So I think one of the largest things that I can do of service in my district, and we've already started that work, is helping them understand the state government and how to navigate and move legislation, and also being able to do that on behalf of diverse populations, Black communities, brown communities, and other communities that make up House District 100.
Thank you. And with that, I'll open it up to our very warmed up audience who is more than ready, prepared to ask the question. Everybody run down at once. Texas faces challenges related to healthcare access and affordability. What policies and initiatives will you support to address these issues and ensure the well-being of your constituents?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that we all can do as far as state lawmakers is support the full expansion of Medicaid. But we also understand in a place like Texas, that's not a conversation that we can have right now without the appropriate leadership in which we need to work to replace so that we can have those votes. But one thing that we did do during the 88th legislative session, and I'm so happy that State Representative Toni Rose is here, was to be able to work on her legislation, which worked to make sure that new mothers had access to health care, not just for 6 months, but up to a total year. I think that those are the different incremental things that we have to do as we navigate a more mid-term strategy of turning this state blue. And working to make sure that we get the right people in the governor's office as lieutenant governor and other statewide leaders as well. And so that's a conversation that doesn't happen in 2 years. That's something we have to move towards and mobilize towards so that we can be able to finally get those outcomes and pass the legislation that we need in healthcare and other areas that we're talking about this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Representative Jones. You have did a good job representing me in House District 100. And I just want to plug this in. At first, when he first ran, y'all, I did not support him. I ain't even gonna play. But I noticed, I paid attention to his work, and he has really been doing a good job for House District 100. And I'm just gonna plug this, and then I'm gonna ask my question. Okay. And so he did represent my community of Joppa in the environmental justice. Him and Representative Rose is doing a good job down at the legislation on environment. But my question is, if you're re-elected, what are your new 3 priorities for House District 100?
Very good question. I'm going to start with probably not a popular answer, but I don't have that answer yet, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when I started on addressing healthcare, addressing public education, working for community infrastructure and equality and justice for all. As we now move forward into a second session, there's something that I've been working on and talking with constituents about, and that is coming up with our legislative agenda in advance. So part of what our work is doing in this second year of my first term is actually reaching out to neighborhood associations, which put me in Joppa, reaching out to union members, reaching out to healthcare leaders, and asking what are the things that are needed to be able to inform the legislative agenda. And it's so interesting that many people have said that question has never been asked to them. What do you need before it's time to file the legislation? So before I come up with my legislative priorities, I want to convene those conversations so that not only that can inform the legislative priorities, but also be ready for us to be able to file legislation day one to move on behalf of House District 100.
Thank you. Thank you. As a state legislator, you understand that there are several Goliath industries that carry a lot of weight. One being insurance, whether it's health or vehicle or home. Question came from online. What regulations would you support and would you try to enforce, or would you enforce to limit insurance companies and from switching an individual's insurance without them being aware, and arbitrarily increasing their rates?
Absolutely. So when it comes to working on issues regarding insurance, we work very closely with the insurance industry and making sure that, particularly when it comes to access to healthcare, we know that lack of insurance or gaps in insurance coverage are the biggest issues that causes gaps in healthcare coverage. So we definitely want to make sure that we are not creating opportunities for disruption to take place. To your question about what regulations that we want to put in place with insurance companies, I think that as a member, and for those who do not know, I've had the opportunity to serve on both the Public Health Committee as well as the Corrections Committee. And so as a member of the Public Health Committee, I work very closely with insurance agencies and any other agencies to fight against any legislation that creates barriers to care, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. So if we're talking about something that's going to be a barrier to care, I'm going to be working just as hard with insurance companies to make sure that that doesn't happen, up to and including not supporting legislation, fighting against legislation that would do so.
Questions?
Representative Jones, my question is, what is your plan for LGBTQIA housing and particularly trans people?
Absolutely. And so, working on behalf of communities of color, particularly those at the intersection of being people of color and LGBTQ, has been a huge focus of mine. And I think that we have to look at some of the exact same conversations that we would do for most of our communities. We need to make sure that we have funding allocated to be able to serve these communities, especially when you talk about housing and the need for both services to serve our young people who are being kicked out of their homes under the age of 18, or you talk about the needs of LGBTQ seniors. They reflect so many issues of communities, whether they're LGBTQ or not, in House District 100. They need to make sure they have access to stable housing first and foremost. Also making sure that includes access to wraparound services like good jobs, like actual affordable homes in these different communities. And I think that if we are tackling these bigger issues, we're going to serve the needs of LGBTQ communities, we're going to serve the needs of people of color, and we're going to continue to serve the diversity that exists within this district.
Thank you. Questions? All right. Warming up. Get started.
Okay, so my question is, what are your solutions you propose to attack against payday loaners and high interest rates?
Absolutely. And so payday loans and high interest rates have been something that a lot of other community have talked about. And so making sure that we're not making it easy for those entities to come into our communities and create these high interest rates of several 100%. That's something that we can make sure to do. We have to continue to also work with those industries to fight against those individuals who are supporting payday loan lenders, because we know that they have deceptive practices that causes so many communities to get into dire financial situations when desperation was already the reason that they came to access those payday lending services. So we have to ultimately make sure that legislation is put forth that acknowledges those high interest rates are a problem, that acknowledges those short turnaround times for repayment are a problem, that acknowledges the existence of them loaning that individual resources when they know they cannot pay those back is a problem. And I will make sure to address legislation to address those problems. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, if you're online watching, please submit your questions. As you submit them, we will bring them forward. And I just want to say one thing. I just want the audience, this side right here is bringing the heat. Okay? This side is hot. I'm waiting on this side to warm up. Okay? Come with it. All right.
We got people walking over.
With that being said, you talked about acknowledging what was said, and one way you do that is, good question, transparency and accountability are important in public office.
Absolutely.
How do you plan to engage your constituents, gather their input on important issues, and ensure transparency in your decision-making process?
Absolutely. Well, it's actually work that I don't plan to do. It's work that's already been done. One, we opened a district office in the district, and we haven't had a strong district office in House District 100 for almost 4 years. So putting that office in place. Two, making sure that my office is accessible. There's a rule on my team that most emails and conversations require a 24 to 48 hour response time to make sure that the issue, no matter the issue, is responded to. Oftentimes I'm responding to issues myself, and which brings a point to my next point is making sure that I'm accessible to my community and not just disappearing in office once getting elected. And I'm happy to say that that's not something that I'm promising anymore. That's something that I have delivered on. I've been visible both in Austin and in the district, in addition to having a regular session and 4 special sessions.
All right, with that, you talked about accessibility, which leads me right to my next question. Transportation infrastructure is critical for economic growth and quality of life. How do you plan to improve transportation systems and address traffic congestions in your district, and also address the issue for seniors who are needing transportation as well?
Absolutely. So we've done 2 things since being elected in this office. One is develop a stronger relationship with the Department of Transportation so that we're sending regular communications to constituents about traffic jams that take place, and also where to find resources if they are interested. And so that's been very important as we look at places like South Dallas and what's happening with 175. We look at parts of MLK, parts of Cedar Crest, all over the district. There's a number of transportation projects that are taking place. We're also working with DART as well to understand the issues around public transportation and making sure that we continue to support routes and making sure they don't disappear. One of the things that we actually just saw last week was the reopening of Route 12 in Dixon Circle, and that's work that my office not only worked on, but we also worked with our local council person, Adam Bazadua, as well as many community leaders to make sure that we saw a return to that. So that's a piece of the accessibility and making sure that I'm willing to get my sleeves rolled up and do the work necessary to get the work done.
So the issue of gun control is a topic of debate. What is your stance on gun control, and how do you plan to balance Second Amendment rights with public safety?
Well, I'm a firm believer that we all should have the right to bear arms. I'm a gun owner, a licensed gun owner myself. Thank you. And my first weapon that I received was actually from my grandmother. So when we talk about gun safety, it's never a conversation about whether guns are needed. It's about responsible gun ownership. And so there are several pieces of legislation that was put forward during the 88th legislation around increasing the age from 18 to 21 for assault weapons, increase background checks, as well as a number of other issues so that we don't continue to see the gun violence that is happening. Again, we see leadership that is defending this behavior and working to make sure that legislation that we need to see do not get across the finish line. So ultimately, as I've stated with healthcare, as I've stated with education, as I've stated with this issue, we have to continue to elect the leaders that are going to get in this office and make sure that that work gets done. So until then, we're not going to have the legislation we need to protect our communities.
This will be the last question. You spoke about getting work and work getting done, and so with that, we do know, again, small businesses is a big part of that. So how do you plan to support small businesses and promote economic growth in your district and across the state?
Absolutely. So the work that we have worked on with small businesses is one, to get more small businesses in House District 100 identified as minority-owned businesses, so that they could be able to get the state qualifications that they need to apply, to be able to receive more state contracts. We also have to build the capacity, and part of that has been work that I've worked on with the Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, and other entities to be able to understand what are the needs of small businesses in House District 100. As somebody who runs a nonprofit in House District 100, I have seen the challenges that exist with making sure that we have a good workforce, making sure that we're protecting our communities and providing good wages, making sure that we're able to provide quality insurance. Those are things that are important to small businesses and the people that work for those small entities. So I want to work to continue to convene small business leaders to be able to have those conversations so that we can develop a comprehensive agenda about how we move forward in helping our small businesses in House District 100 and the city of Dallas.
Thank you, thank you. So with that brings us to our closing statement.
Absolutely. Well, I had a different closing statement prepared, but since I have the stage by myself, I think I'm gonna take a few more liberties. One, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I not only have constituents and colleagues to thank for being here, I thank my family for being here, inclusive of my grandmother, my aunt, my sisters, my brother-in-law, for being here. And I'm so grateful to be able to have you here because this work is bigger than just one individual. This work is just bigger than one person's pension. This work is bigger than just one person's desire to continue running for office. This work is about service to a district that has been historically ignored when it comes to all of the issues that we are talking about that are important. Gun safety, our public health, protecting our public education, and I think that what is most important is protecting House District 100 for communities that have made House District 100 the community that it is. And so that means our seniors. That means having opportunities for myself, someone who grew up in the district, to be able to come back into the district and contribute to the district. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to contribute in this capacity as state representative, and I'm asking for your support to continue to allow me to go back and do that work. When I came and said what I said to you before, it still stands. I'm not just here for the short term. I'm here to be able to do the long-term work necessary to change this work so that we can aid our communities and do what's right and really get this work done. So again, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it, and I'm going to continue to work for us all. God bless everyone.
All right, with that being said, we have our final race for tonight. With all the conversation, I know you all are just preparing to ask questions, right? Yeah, exactly. All right, so with that, let's have our candidates for U.S. Representative District 32 make their way to the stage. Callie Butcher, Raja Chaudhry, Alex Cornwallis, Kevin Felder, Julie Johnson, Zachary Manning, Zachariah, sorry. Thank you. Zachariah Manning, Jan McDowell, Justin A. Moore, Christopher Panayoto. Get it right. Panayoto. All right, Christopher Panayoto and Brian Williams. So again, as we've done before, we'll start off with a 2-minute opening, followed by a few questions and questions from the audience, and then we'll have our closing statement. So with that being first, Kevin Felder.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Felder, former Dallas City Councilman that represented this district. I'm going to start off with personal information that I rarely share. When I was 5 years old, I lost my mother. My father had to raise 6 children by himself at age 30. At the age of 7, I was hit by a car and I was not expected to live. But I'm here today, and I thank God for that. I'm running for this seat because I do have experience. Experience makes the difference. I have served as the immediate past president of the Dallas branch of the NAACP. I received the Freedom Fighter Award from the Dallas branch of the NAACP in 2016. This museum has a very special place in my heart. I've been a member of this museum for 24 years. In 2019, I brought slavery at Jefferson's Monticello to this museum. 80,000 people came through this museum. It generated $2 million worth of economic development for this area. I opened a district office here in South Dallas where there had never been one. My work has manifested itself in this community. I also took down an albatross of a car wash that had been in this community, petrifying the people for the last 30 years. And so my work has manifested itself in South Dallas. It's not about who you know, what you know. It's about how you do your job and how you show that you care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Paniotto. I am a concerned citizen. I jumped into the race in July because after 35 years living in my community in North Dallas, the same community I grew up in, I've noticed that the quality of life has continued to go down. More and more of my neighbors, more and more people have been priced into homelessness, and I feel that no politician in DC is doing anything about it, barely speaking about it, and we're being gaslit that the economy is doing great when 61% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Rent is out of control, and a lot of times they like us to blame our neighbors, our new out-of-state neighbors. But really, it's Wall Street entities buying up the housing market, and I have a plan to go after them, to break them up, and alleviate some of the most of the cost of living, because a roof over your head is the largest part of your cost of living. I'm also consistently anti-war. I believe that the country is falling apart, and we are spending $200 billion on a proxy war, on a genocide, and now we're bombing Yemen. So we're fanning the flames of World War III even more than we were just by tinkering with Taiwan. Our seniors are in trouble. I am aware of many seniors whose Social Security check does not make it through the month. I have people in my family in that boat. I believe that we are just leaving the population to flounder, and the entities that run things are really sticking it to us, and I want to be the change and make a difference in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams.
Good evening. I want to thank Dallas Examiner for putting this on tonight.
Keep it on
There we go. All right. I'm Dr. Brian Williams, and I'm running for Wisconsin District 32 because our country is in a crisis, Congress is broken, and we need new kinds of leaders to address these issues. Issues like leaders like me who embody service before self, who've had success on the front lines here in Dallas and in Washington, and represent the diversity that we celebrate in District 32. Now, I'm not a politician, but my life has been about service. My father was 23 years in the Air Force, and I grew up watching him put on his uniform every day. I was inspired to go into the military myself. I'm a proud graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, also a trauma surgeon, worked at Parkland Hospital, and I also served in Congress as a health policy advisor for then Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I'm also a father and husband. I live in East Dallas. Some of you may know me from the mass shooting of police officers in July 2016. 14 police officers shot. I cared for 7 of those officers, 3 of whom died on my watch, and that night nearly broke me. I still think about it every day. But it was afterwards I realized that to be part of the healing of Dallas, I had to get involved outside the hospital. So Mayor Rawlings appointed me to chair the Police Review Board, so I had a chance to work to bridge the gap of trust between communities of color and the police department. I served as Judge Jenkins' Special Advisor for Health Equity to ensure that, like during the pandemic, we had equitable rollout of the vaccine and ensure everyone had access to medications and treatment. But I've also seen what's possible in Congress with the right leaders. When I served alongside Senator Chris Murphy and Speaker Pelosi to pass monumental legislation for gun safety and for health care. So that's why I'm asking for your vote in this election, because we have an epidemic of gun violence, we have a crisis in health care, we have rolling back of women's rights, and we have attacks on our democracy. And all these things I've experienced on the front lines here in Dallas and in Washington. And together, we can go take this fight and create justice right here in District 32 today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Justin Moore, and I'm a civil rights attorney that's from this city and that's been serving this city for 10 years as a civil rights attorney. The reason why I'm running for office is that we just have leaders that are too tender. When it comes to issues of foreign policy, when it comes to issues of domestic policy, we have nobody in DC fighting for our rights. Currently, right now, we have a genocide that's going on in the Gaza Strip. We don't have a single leader that's willing to lift their voice in response to the lives that are being lost by Palestinians in that area. What I want to do when I get into office is to be that voice. I've served as a voice for the voiceless for 10 years. Many of you in this room have seen my work. On the front lines fighting against white supremacy, fighting against banks who practice predatory banking practices, putting myself on the line day in and day out to make sure my fellow citizens here have the care that they need in the institutions that they go to try and get the support that they need. You see, this isn't a game, y'all. If you check out this stage right now, one of the front runners has decided not to be here. Now, she's been trying to buy our vote for the past 7 months. And some of those folks she's been paying were in this room earlier, and they left. What are we going to do about folks that want to come into our communities and try and take advantage of us? I've been standing in the gap between the wolves and the vulnerable for 10 years, and we have a wolf in this race. I'm running to make sure this wolf does not get into office and ravage our community. That's what's at stake. We have too many wolves in D.C. That's why Palestinians are getting slaughtered. That's why we have inequities in our communities. That's why we have a perpetual state of oppression that continues to put our lives in jeopardy. I'm running for U.S. Congress District 32, and I'm going to ask everybody that lives in this district to give me your vote. Thank you.
All right, candidates, before you speak. All right, candidates, again, I know it's been a while since I said it. You probably blinked a couple of times, and now that you're on stage, it's a little different. You're in a different area. But I love you. You love me.
She's not here.
We are one big happy family. We will answer the question as it is asked. In the event that you do attack your opponent, you will lose your question and time. Again, I love you. You love me. We're all one big happy family. Ms. James.
Good evening. I'm Jan McDowell, candidate for District 32. Of the 10 candidates in this race, I am the only one who's a CPA. I think Congress could use some financial sense, and I seem to get kind of universal agreement on that when I mention it to people. I also think that of all the issues that I'm sure we'll talk about this evening, they are also interrelated. And I think that the overarching concept is that we need to be able to help people to thrive, that we all do better when we all do better. And it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. There are so many people all across our district, our state, our country with great ideas. And I will bring up the idea of money in politics. I think across party lines, people believe that money in politics is a huge issue. And I think that when you focus on the money in a race or the money that people have, and then assume that the people who don't have money are irrelevant, that's where the problem comes in. I meet people at their doors, I meet people all around the district, and they have terrific ideas. I meet people anywhere I go, talk to them about their ideas, and it's not the people with the most money that come up with the best ideas. People who are trying to get by and survive and thrive have wonderful ideas about how to make that happen. And I want to be the candidate or the congressperson who listens to those ideas and puts them into action to help us all. Thank you.
Ms. Manning.
Hi, my name is Zachariah Manning. I live in Congressional District 32. I also work in Congressional District 32. I work for Richardson Independent School District. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need to do more for our Congressional District 32. This is the congressional seat that Colin Allred is vacating in order to run for U.S. Senate. And I will be your next congressman in this particular district. And I'm gonna tell you tonight why I should be your next congressman. when you hear about things such as gun safety, you're going to hear one candidate, such as myself, telling you about the solutions that I'm going to bring to gun safety with a no gun purchase list. You're going to hear about my gun safety insurance proposal for homeowners and renters. You're going to also hear about vouchers, no to private school vouchers for me. And people always ask me, well, hold on, how in the world are you going to do something about vouchers from a federal level that has to do with a state? You're going to hear about that tonight from me, how I'm going to propose to address vouchers for private schools here in Texas. You're going to also hear about things such as abortion rights from me, how we can look to attack that from a federal level. So I have solutions, and you will see those solutions proudly posted on my website, which is ZachariahManning.com. So everybody can always talk about what we need to do. I have solutions, and I also have funding topics on there, how these solutions are going to be paid for. Again, I'm Zachariah Manning. I look forward to telling all the information you need to know about me, and I know I'm going to earn your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our opening statements. Our first question, we'll go to Mr. Panayiotou. What motivated you to run for U.S. Representative District 32?
Well, I've been too close. I've been a lifelong observer of current events. I went to school for journalism. I've been in the journalism field on the side. I'm writing for a magazine. I've always been concerned with what's going on in my community, and over the past few years, I've seen the decline continue. Like I said, we're being gaslit that the economy is doing great. Stock market is doing great, but that doesn't impact everybody. I've never seen so many homeless people in my community. I've never seen the cost of living so high, and I don't feel that anybody in Washington is doing anything about it. I feel like our politicians have failed us, and I would be kicking myself if I didn't just jump in the race and try to do something about it. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I'm a trauma surgeon. I know I've seen too many children dead due to gun violence. And I've just had enough of washing blood off my shoes at work. I am a veteran also. I've trained on these weapons. I've lost my own family members to gun violence. And there are ways that we can do to end this. So this is what motivated me to get into this race, but also the rolling back on women's rights and this ongoing threats to our democracy. There are things that we can do, and as I said, when I worked in Congress as an advisor, I've seen what's possible, and it gives me hope. I'll help to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety bill in a generation. Expanded background checks, red flag laws, and most importantly, I think, well, not most importantly, but of great equal importance is money for community violence intervention. To give money to the communities, to work with law enforcement to keep their communities safe. Just want to go back and continue to build on the work so we can create communities where we all can be safe and thrive.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
You know, as a civil rights attorney, I have a special function in our society. For all intents and purposes, when our elected leaders fail to serve our communities, folks come to me. I've been called a stopgap solution, just like a lot of other civil rights attorneys. The problem that I see is my job should not exist, especially if we had representation that actually fought for us. We have too many leaders in office who are either too timid or they just don't give a damn about our people. And they leave us holding the bag and they leave us abandoned. The reason why I'm running for office is that I'm sick and tired of it. I truly am. Now, I'm not going to talk about anybody on the stage, so I'm just going to list it broadly. A lot of the leaders that we have here in Texas, they're failures. Name a single piece of legislation that has protected us from a radical conservative agenda that took away DEI, abortion, and that has made our border dangerous to cross. Name one, I guarantee you won't find anybody. That's why I'm running.
Thank you.
I actually go back to a film that came came out in 2011. It was called Inside Job, and it was a Academy Award winning documentary that year. It was about how the financial crisis meltdown in 2008, 2009 from the government standpoint. The people in the government, like the Treasury Secretary and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, all these people who could see what was happening and didn't do anything about it because so many people were getting rich off of what was going on. I watched it with a group of friends, and at the end we were livid. One of the people in our group said, well, you know, nothing is going to change unless different people run for office and different people get elected. And I decided right then that was something I wanted to do, and I've been working hard now for several years to try to bring common sense, financial, lift everybody up ideas to Washington.
Thank you. Mr. Manning.
So, why I'm running for office is twofold. First, I'm an identical twin. My identical twin brother passed away in 2018. And I had to look at myself and ask, what have I done for my community, for my nation? I couldn't think of anything but only make money. And I've done that for the majority of my life. And I said, I have to do things differently. And so I started volunteering, helping in our community, boots on the ground. I was a PTA president, and a lot of people said, oh, that's nothing, that's nothing. But you wouldn't believe how political a PTA can be. So PTA president, then I started volunteering, helping the homeless and helping the communities that is Congressional District 32. That's why I'm running.
Mr. Felder.
I'm running for this seat because I have experience. Experience makes the difference. Many of the candidates will tell you what they want to do. I've already done it. I represented this district. I put a district office in this district that had never been here before. In this museum, I brought a multi-million-dollar project. In addition to that, I passed $50 million out of the bond package for Fair Park, the first time ever. Out of that $50 million, $2 million came to this museum, the first time ever. So my work has manifested itself in this community. No one on this stage can say that. Not only that, I've lived in District 32 for 27 years. You have people in this race that don't live in District 32. That makes all the difference. They can't even vote for themselves.
Thank you. Again, if you're online, please submit your questions. And as we get ready to go to the audience, I just want to remind our esteemed panel, I would love to hear each and every one of you, but some of you are borderline on not being up here and not being able to ask a question. So again, I love you. You love me. We love each other, okay? All right. As Big Mama said, don't try me. All right. So with that, questions from the audience.
Hello, I have a question for Mr. Felder here.
Mm-hmm. Everybody.
Everybody, okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll wait for this.
Oh,
never
everybody
mind.
has
Ask him after, but never mind.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Come on down.
I heard one of the candidates say that one of the leading candidates was not here. I wanted to know from all of the candidates, are there polls that show that that person is the leading candidate, or are you just thinking, or just giving her that leading spot.
First up, Mr. Williams, Dr. Williams.
Well, so just for clarity, we could actually talk about her now, right?
His question was, as he stated.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm not aware of any public polls that show who is leading in this race right now. I got into this race because the country's in a crisis, the gun violence epidemic, rolling back on abortion rights, healthcare crisis, attacks to our democracy, and that's why I got into the race. Like I said, I'm not a politician, lifelong public servant, but I've had experience and success here in Dallas and in Washington. I feel I'm the best leader to represent District 32 in Congress, and I'm asking for your vote. Learn more at drbrianwilliamsforcongress.com.
Mr. Moore, counsel, be careful.
How am I supposed to? All right. Good question. So there aren't any polls that suggest that, but I would submit to you that the Dallas establishment would suggest that, right? You know, this person lives or is from Highland Park. Her ability to raise money in Highland Park has given her, in her mind, the right to say that she's a leading candidate. And you have the establishment in this city that's trying to position her as a leading candidate in this race. And that's a huge problem, because communities like ours, we get left out. Money should not decide, proximity to money should not decide who's a leading candidate. Our democracy should not work that way, because if that is the case, our communities will get continuously left out of decision-making that comes to what is needed for our community. That's the problem. So God bless you for asking that question, because that's something that needs to be asked here in these types of forums. Why aren't these candidates showing up to talk to our community? It's because they don't care about our community. That's a huge problem. Oh, all right, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Bell.
I think the easy answer to that question, as far as who are leading candidates, based on financial reports, there are candidates who are leading in the race to raise money. My approach to a political campaign, and to really anything I approach in life, is to take a smart solution. And I don't believe that all political campaigns are the same. The race for District 32 is different from probably any of the other races we're hearing about tonight. This race, this district, is extremely democratic. The person who wins this primary is going to win the seat to represent it in Washington. So all of the money, and there are a couple that have raised around $1 million, the people that have that money are using it to run against other Democrats. They do not need it to run in a general election. I've heard people say, I know how to win a general election. Well, there is no such thing here. Yes, there will be a Republican on the ballot, but it's a Democratic district. So I have limited fundraising for this race.
Mr. Mann.
All right, so here's the deal. I'm not a woman. But my own polling that I've done, that is fair polling, is really showing that I'm leading this race. So that's what my polling has shown.
Order.
So here's the deal. You got to put in the footwork, and you got to put in the community time in front of people in our community and in our district. And with the exception of maybe one other or so individuals, I have put in that footwork, speaking about myself. I collected petition signatures in order to get on the ballot. I know I have done that. I can't say that about anybody else.
Thank you. Mr. Felder.
So I'm going to continue where Zachariah left off. I collected 810 signatures. There are only 500 required. Now, Anyone else that did not collect signatures paid. I have very high name ID in this district. No question about it. I used to represent this district. When I knock on doors, hi, Mr. Felder. That's how it is. So at the end of the day, it's the work that you put in. I don't care how much money any candidate has. On the last campaign stop we had, I showed them a pair of my shoes where the sole had come off for all the walking that I did. Finally, I went to Selma, Alabama this past summer just to show my commitment to civil rights. This needs to change. All of the egregious things that are happening need to change.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't even try.
That's cool. I really hate that he called her the front runner or one of the leading candidates, but it is based on money. Personally, I'm a working class guy. I still have a job. I have a full-time job, so I do my campaigning after work on weekends, and I'm running a grassroots campaign. All my money comes from friends, family, people I've inspired along the way, and out of my pocket because I really believe in my cause. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And let me just take a point of privilege right here, right quick. One of the reasons that we don't allow candidates to talk about one another, because we want you to know what their policies are. We want to know who's going to represent us. And as a former elected official, every time I got close to a mic, my first job was to tell you what I could do for you and why I'm the most qualified for that position. I really don't care about what you think about the other person, because I want to know what you're going to do when it's time for you to press yes or no. So that is the reason why we don't talk about the other, because guess what? That 15, 20 seconds, the last that you got, that cuts into your time. There are people that are watching that don't know you. There are people in the audience that don't know you. They're here to learn about you. So that is why we're different than any other forum that you may go to, where that may happen, but not at Monday Night Politics. We're about educating our community. We're about informing them. Okay, not entertaining them, but informing them. Okay? So with that, are there any questions from the audience? Come on down.
So I want to ask you guys, how would you respond to the lack of representation of people all across America once you do get the job? Such as there are many Democrats within this country. There's way more Democrats than there are Republicans. But yet and still, representation-wise, you see the House, you see over-representation of Republicans in this instance. So how would you combat this? Voter suppression.
All right, first up, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, we got to renew the energy behind the John Lewis voting bill. And we got to infuse it with more energy as well. Now, I've seen, in this state specifically, radical Republican attacks on folks who are just asking if they have the ability to vote. When I think about this issue, I think about Crystal Mason. She was a client of mine. She filed a provisional ballot in Tarrant County. When you file a provisional ballot, you're asking the question, am I eligible to vote? Now, there was a Republican there who saw her fill out that ballot, and they actively started to maliciously prosecute her. Thanks to me and my co-counsel, we were able to appeal her case and get her out of prison. These types of voter suppression cases exist around the country. What we need to do is start turning voter suppression into a federal crime. We got to try and find legislation that we can creatively craft to ensure that folks that want to try and suppress our votes will be held to account and face prison time if they do so. Because this is a very urgent issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. McDowell.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. That's just the way it is. I would say that I would start also with the John Rights Voting Rights Advancement, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. One of the major points of that is to outlaw gerrymandered districts. And that is such a huge piece piece of how people end up not being represented. It seems like Republicans know that what they're selling people don't want, so the game becomes, how do I manipulate things so that we can pass things with, even if our position is a minority held position, the votes are gerrymandered so it comes out where we get more people in office than they do. I wasn't very well described. I would definitely think that we need to lift up all the good ideas of everybody, regardless of the money, the race, the color, the everything, the else. We need to all be in the same boat.
Thank you. Mr. Manning.
So I think we all agree, the candidates that went before me, we all agree that the John Lewis Voting Act needs to be revisited. But we also need to piggyback on that by saying any elected official that is elected or hired suppresses anyone's vote, they need to serve jail time, because you can't hide under this immunity what these elected officials are doing. So we need to impose jail time on them for suppressing our voting rights as well. We need to have a national Voters Day to where you're not working that particular day, where we can ensure that everybody gets out and vote. So we need to enact a national voting day for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Felder.
I actually have a personal story with regard to redistricting and voter dilution. It happened to me. I was redistricted out of my district in 2021. So instead of sitting around being sad about it, I went down to the federal court and filed a lawsuit. Not only that, but I've now found out that the U.S. Supreme Court held that redistricting and voter dilution is against the law. And so that gives me hope that I'm going to win my lawsuit. Because not only that, the person that did it also violated the Dallas City Charter. And I found out just the other day, that is a crime. That is a crime. And so you'll be hearing more about this pretty soon. I filed this back in February 2020.
Thank you. Thank you.
22.
Thank you.
About a decade ago or so, the University of Princeton said that we no longer live in a democracy, we live in an oligarchy. Basically, the people with the money make the rules, and we have to live with them. So we have to get money out of politics. We need term limits on top of the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill. If you are counting prisoners that are locked up in a community, either they vote or you don't get to count those people as part of the census when it comes to money coming to that community. Also, gerrymandering. There are so many different ways to go about to get representation. I think the biggest representation that no one talks about is people of lesser means, people who don't make money, people who are out here struggling day to day, and that's many people of different ethnicities and backgrounds, but it's also a socioeconomic component to it as well. Thank you.
I love that question. We definitely need representation, diversity in our elected leaders. And two things we do at the federal level for sure is John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and also we need to end Citizens United so we can get big money out of politics so we can allow more people with lesser means to have some sort of level playing field when they're running for office. And I think about this, come from a long line of veterans. My great-great-great-grandfather served in the Civil War in the South Carolina Regiment. My grandfather, great-grandfather served in World War II in segregated units. My father's career Air Force, and I think about what they did fighting for these democratic ideals that have still been denied to so many people today. We need to continue to do that work. And by doing that, we need to get more diverse representation with the lived experience of what it's like to not have these rights, to fight for them for everyone.
All right. With that, again, if you're viewing us online, we ask that you submit your questions, and we will run them down. We'll ask them of our panel. Are there any additional questions from the audience? Anyone
I have
else?
about 10 more, but I guess I had my.
I'm sorry?
I have about 10 more, but I guess I had my.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you want to pass one of those questions to somebody else, much appreciated. Yes, ma'am.
Since gerrymandering keeps being addressed, I just thought of this question. Given recent developments in Georgia where concerns about legal actions have arisen, how do you envision addressing the potential threat of RICO chargings being pressed in Texas for individuals who speak against gerrymandering? What solutions do you propose to safeguard freedom of expression on this matter?
Ms. McDowell, yes, Ms. McDowell.
You were like behind the podium.
Okay. Given recent developments in Georgia where concerns about legal actions have arisen, how do you envision addressing the potential threat of RICO charges being pressed in Texas for individuals who speak out against gerrymandering? What solutions do you propose to safeguard freedom of expression on this matter?
First statement is I am not an attorney. That doesn't sound like a question that's right up the alley of a CPA. And it brings up another thing that I've been thinking through a lot of these questions, so I'll use this minute to say this. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I am open to the idea that I don't know everything. I don't think there's any candidate for any office that can be an expert on every issue that's likely to come before them. So I am willing to not have the ego that would stand in my way of reaching out when something comes up that I don't know. I'll reach out to somebody I've met in probably District 32 that I know would know more about it than I do and ask them to make me smarter on that particular issue. So I think where people say, oh, I have experience and I've done this and that, I think it behooves us to go into a job knowing that we're a newbie, any of us in this race, and learn because we'll be new, not
Thank
an
you.
expert.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I do want to let y'all know, Yasmin is my volunteer. So I know a lot of us here today, is being tested with the challenging questions that she's asking, and I thank you for asking those challenging questions. So I don't even know that this question was going to come up, but let's look at it like this. Anybody that's trying to take away your voice should not have that ability to do so. Anybody that's trying to take away your voice with respect to trying to protest gerrymandering should be charged themselves. And that's what I would counter a bill saying, that if you're trying to take away the rights of somebody voting in a certain area, that you should be charged.
Thank you. Mr. Felder?
So it appears to me that if that is the case, that would be a violation of the First Amendment, your right to free speech. And so that's the way I would look at it. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I'm going to go ahead and go more into depth about the case that I talked to you about earlier. In the state of Alabama, the state legislature diluted the votes and they gerrymandered the new congressional seats in Alabama. The U.S. Supreme Court got the case, and they ordered the Alabama legislature to draw in another African-American seat. The state of Alabama legislature refused to abide by the U.S. Supreme Court. That's what we're facing. They won't abide by the U.S. Supreme Court. We're in real bad shape right now. We really are.
Thank you.
Okay, well, as for RICO charges, I mean, those are meant for continuing criminal organizations. I would say that, again, like Mr. Felder said, First Amendment violation. Unfortunately, there has been a lot of First Amendment attacks. The quote-unquote misinformation, disinformation, these are things that one side uses and the other side uses, and we all lose as a country. When it comes to gerrymandering, I mean, I would think you're more of a criminal organization if you are gerrymandering as opposed to protesting it. But I would say that your First Amendment is your best defense for that. Thank you.
I mean, first, that's a fundamental right. That's why we have a Bill of Rights. And to protect that, we need to elect people that we're going to make sure we can protect these rights for everyone and not be selective about who we apply them to. The Bill of Rights, they've been foundational in our Constitution. Freedom to express ourselves is something that we all hold very dearly and importantly. So we must protect that. So just collect leaders that will respect that right for everyone.
So that's a good question, and I'm going to try and provide an answer that's comprehensive within a minute. So for one, we're talking about the state of Georgia's RICO statute, so that's not going to apply here in Texas. But I think the fear that's undergirding your question is, how do we protect ourselves from radical state legislatures to override the Constitution, right? And right now we have a Supreme Court that's chock full of radical conservatives. And the question behind that is, what are we going to do about that? Are we going to pack the court? Are we going to institute new standards of ethics to make sure Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas isn't getting bribes? Isn't getting bribes to foment a radical conservative agenda? I think the point that needs to be made here is, how do we protect ourselves from the Supreme Court? And for me, I want to institute federal judicial reform. I want to establish an ethics committee that reviews every decision that the Supreme Court makes, to also review if it's tied to bribes from billionaires. That's what I want to do. Because questions like yours, that is a huge issue. And I do believe Texas, if it does work in Georgia, Texas is going to try and implement it here.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. To the panel. We understand that your role is not just of a domestic nature, but you also have international policies. So the question that I have for each of you, what are your top 3 pressing foreign policy issues for this country, and what are your solutions? We'll start with you, Mr. Manning.
Top 3 foreign policy issues. Okay. So, first of all, we have to protect democracy around the world, first and foremost. I would also, secondly, institute, if we go into any foreign war, that you have to, as a country here in the U.S., you have to invest the equal amount of money that you're going to invest in a war. If you're going to give Ukraine $50 million, you have to also balance that with investing $50 million in our disadvantaged areas and communities around the state. That's what I would implement as number 2. Number 3, one of the issues would be, we have to protect lives. Whatever lives there are that's going on.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips.
The hot button issue right now is the war in Gaza. It's really not a war. It's genocide. It's slaughter. We have to protect human rights all over the world. But the biggest genocide is actually in Africa. It's in Congo, over the mineral rights. 20 million people have been slaughtered in the Congo. So we have to make sure that we're focusing on the right thing. We're being diverted and looking at Gaza when the real problem is in Africa, over the minerals for your cell phones and your televisions. That's what's going on. Nobody's paying attention to that. That's very critical. How many seconds are
Aye.
I'll get it next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Panayoto.
Top three, stop the war funding in Ukraine and Israel. We cut Israel off. We stopped the bombing. Number two, we lift the sanctions in all the countries in the Western Hemisphere. It's only a few, but we are destroying people's countries that are making people come here for asylum. Number three, we don't believe in democracy. We are the bully of the world. We stop with regime changes, regime change operations. We stop meddling in people's elections. We stop meddling in people's countries, and we instead of using our military might, we use diplomacy. We use investment, kind of like what the Chinese are doing all over the world, because we've stretched ourselves too thin, and we are ripe for getting attacked, losing another war. I mean, war is not to be won. War is to spend money on the military-industrial complex, which in turn spends money on campaigns, and the cycle continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Williams.
So three, foreign policy, I would first put up, well, not in no particular order, but immigration reform is one, securing our borders, finding a pathway for citizenship to people in the country, but also our different ports. This is a domestic policy intersects with foreign policy. Also with the rise of authoritarianism around the globe, our military and economic strategic partnerships need to be maintained and fortified to ensure that authoritarianism does not continue to spread. And the war in Gaza, I'm still sick that there is the amount of death that is happening in Gaza. I'd like to see the war come to an end, and I understand what has led to the situation we're in. We had the attack on October 7th in Israel. Over 1,000 died, several hundred taken hostage. And now we have this war ongoing now. I'd like to see the war come to an end and make some sort of pathway towards peace.
Thank you.
Obviously a ceasefire now, but the three things that I think incorporates that vision, one, we got to deal with the rabid colonialism that still persists in this world. We got to put an end to colonial regimes immediately. It only foments terror, danger, and death. And you're seeing that in Gaza right now with that colonial project that the Zionists have implemented over the past 75 years. So dealing with that. Also re-entering the Paris Accords that Trump pulled us out of. We need to realize that climate change is a huge issue for our foreign policy. It's decreasing our borders, it's displacing people, and it's making it hard for people to live in these war-torn areas, right? Also our trade issues, our trade agreements, our foreign trade agreements. It's crushing the working class here in this country. We need to give our people the ability to make a living wage, and the only way we do that is to stop shipping our jobs overseas. Those are the three things that we need to do. It's most pressing, and I believe if we can tackle that, if I can help tackle that in Congress, that means my time there would have been beneficial for the people on the ground.
Thank you.
So first I'll say I stand with Ukraine. I think if we want to support democracy at home, we need to support democracy abroad. Our allies need to know that they can count on our support. Second, and these are not in order of importance, ceasefire now. I think we need to condition any further support for Israel. It can't just be a knee-jerk automatic war with Israel. I haven't figured out why that is. Ceasefire now. And third would be our border and our immigration. I'm assuming there's going to be another question about that. So but that is the third area that I would say in foreign policy that is critical to us at this point.
All right, thank you. And staying on along that theme of international policy, Dallas County sits on the inland port, natural trade route. With that being said, if elected, how do you propose to balance the trade, the import-export of the United States? How do you propose to balance? Because right now, we import far more than we export. How do you, or what plan, or what suggestions do you have to balance that? We'll start with Mr. Felder.
it's critical to give money for research, for manufacturing. Manufacturing is the key to balancing the trade, because as the question was asked, we have an imbalance because all we do is consume, buy. We have to start manufacturing. The government has to put in millions of dollars for research and to support those companies that manufacture in this country. That is the key. If we continue to just buy from China, buy from Mexico, buy from India, we're not doing anything to spur economic development and to balance the balance of trade. We have to start producing in this country in order to balance our trade deficit in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, over the years, we've realized that corporate America doesn't really care about America. That's why we are in a position where we're fear China, because we've sent all our jobs into manufacturing over there. I believe, like Mr. Felder said, we need to invest in manufacturing here. Also, I would use the tax code to make it much more incentivized to create jobs here as opposed to abroad. Either you lower taxes on people, on companies creating jobs here, or you tax the hell out of the ones that have already shipped jobs overseas to incentivize them to bring them back. Manufacturing is going to be the only way we can do that, balance the trade, and also we need to take a harder look at all of our trade deals. These free trade agreements have killed us, and those need to be reworked. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, import-export is tightly bound to a good economy, right? So we need to create an economy that works for all of us, not just some of us. So, the infrastructure bill can bring a lot of great jobs to Dallas. For example, the broadband opportunity for us that would also address equity within the region as well. Pay people a living wage, $15 an hour. We need to protect the rights of union workers to organize and fight for fair wages, safe workplaces, good health care. These are all things that we can do to ensure that people here in Dallas have good jobs, can take advantage of the economy, and also can thrive as individuals and families. And as representative of Congress, that is what I will fight for, to ensure that people in 32 can thrive.
I feel like I'm going to be a parent on this, so I'm going to try and find a unique answer that's creative, but that also speaks to the question that you asked. I think we need to help boost our unions. In Texas, it's hard for unions to organize, right? With a strong union comes more opportunities to maintain manufacturing in certain areas. Now, I think everybody's in agreement. We need more homegrown manufacturing here. We've seen what running manufacturing jobs out of cities have done to decimated communities. So obviously we need more manufacturing, but the way we get there is to make sure we have strong unions. That's the only way to get there. Allowing them to advocate for living wages, making sure manufacturing jobs stay in our communities, that is the key to us ensuring that NAFTA, with our inland port, is primarily supported and bolstered in a very strong way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think when we talk about unions, we need to talk about the PRO Act, which is the protect the right to organize. It works against the right to work laws where companies can just hire and fire indiscriminately. So I think, just like all my colleagues behind me have said, that yes, we need to promote unions, good jobs that allow people to thrive with good wages. I'm a member of the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans that speaks for the, it's union affiliated. Some members are from unions, some are not, but the overarching aim is to recognize the fact that workers are the backbone of America and need our protection and our support.
Thank you.
So I've owned businesses pretty much all my life since I was 17 years of age. We have to make U.S. corporations that are doing business abroad, we have to make them pay their fair share of taxes. We have to demand that they come back here, manufacture here, and we have to put in place the infrastructure at our public schools and at our community colleges in order to have trained manufacturing workers to be able to do this work. So we have to tax the corporations to get them back here so they can pay their fair share. Thank you.
All right, so let's now kind of pivot from international policy to a dual policy of both international and domestic. 2030, the European Union has decided that they're no longer going to produce gas-powered vehicles, but they're going to be all electric. But at the same time, the United States is a major producer of pollution in this world. So with that being said, how will you address the challenges of climate change and promote sustainability as your role is, if elected, as a member of Congress? We'll begin with Chris. We'll go first. Thank you.
Well, when it comes to climate change, I believe in a top-down strategy. The United States is not serious about climate change. We haven't stopped dropping bombs. We haven't stopped having wars. The military, if it was a nation state, would be the 46th or 47th largest polluter in the world. We blew up or sanctioned the blow up of the Nord Stream pipeline, which was the largest emission of methane gas ever. I don't believe electric vehicles are the solution. Like one of the candidates, I don't remember who it was, said something about Congo and the mining that's being done. It's terrible for the people of Congo. It's terrible for the environment. And then we're plugging up electric vehicles to gas-powered, coal-powered power plants. I believe in alternate sources of energy, more than just water. More than just solar and wind. We have hydroelectric. We have geothermal. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I feel we need a comprehensive approach to reduce the effects of human-induced climate change that requires federal, local, and state intervention. We just came off the hottest record in the year, 2023. A record number of billion-dollar disasters, from floods to wildfires to hurricanes or tornadoes. And the greatest impact of those disasters are on communities of color, those that generally do not have a voice in the political process. But Texas could be a leader in this. Texas could be a leader in renewable clean energy, especially here in Dallas. And that'll also help out with the economy. That's a great source of great union jobs that can come here to Dallas. And we can also use that to invest in our small businesses and entrepreneurs who are trying to get things started. So climate change is truly an opportunity for Texas to be a leader, but also to advance issues of racial equity when it comes to transforming communities that have been historically underinvested and suffering from bad policies.
Energy solutions is the key to a brighter tomorrow when it comes to our climate. Obviously, we have a failing climate and we need to address this immediately. My work in the international leadership community has had me work hand in hand with the UN to try to achieve the sustainability goals that you just mentioned. What I mentioned earlier, one of my questions was we need to get back into the Paris Agreement. The fact that Trump pulled us out was terrible. So we need to get back into that. 2, we need to start talking about an energy economy. So energy solutions, as my opponents have just talked about, it can create a world of jobs for folks that need them. It can create a double yield. Not only can it save our climate, but it can also pull folks out of poverty. That's what we need. We need twin solutions that can not only save our climate, but also make sure folks can get a livable wage to pull themselves out of poverty, be able to get into affordable housing, and have lives that they can live, that they can thrive and create a future for themselves. And I think having energy solutions as a primary target is a thing for that.
Thank you.
Several years ago, Greta Thun described our climate situation as a house on fire emergency. I think she was right then, and I think we haven't responded the way I would think we would respond to a house on fire emergency. It is urgent. It's getting more dire by the day as we don't do enough to make strides to fix it. Solar and wind, I think, are the way to go. I have solar panels on my roof that I've had for about 7 years now. It's curious to me that as one of the greatest contributors to the greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere, it is the underdeveloped nations that stand to fare the worst by the ultimate disaster. So I think we need to get it to be urgent and make strides to fix it before we all lose.
So, to address climate, we do have to look at solar and wind. I've been a person that have owned gasoline and diesel trucks and cars. When I leased a electric vehicle, I can talk firsthand about the benefits of that electric vehicle. We have to incentivize solar by giving credits to the people that's gonna use these solar panels. For example, when we had the winter storm, it would have been fantastic if most Americans, or most Texans, had solar power and backup behind that. Then we would not have lost so many lives in that ice storm. So I do believe in solar and wind, and that's important for us going forward. And it is the future. Thank you.
We're going to have to take a look at every option out there, because I talked to a cousin of mine in Michigan, and they had a very bad snowstorm this last few days. Guess what? All the electronic charging vehicle stations were frozen. Nobody could charge their car. So that's the fault of that particular energy charging solution. So we need to look at hydrogen. We need to look at the ocean. We need to look at solar. We need to look at wind. We have to look at every approach out there in order to come up with a solution. There is no one silver bullet. We have to do a shotgun approach in order to solve this solution. This is something that is going to affect all of us. But the real problem is coming from China, from India, and from Africa, because that's where a lot of the, they don't have any environmental protections over there.
Thank you. All right, this will be the final question before we get to our 2-minute closing. And this question goes to all of our candidates. As you have seen in our nation, this Congress has looked like Jerry Springer. And as a result of it, they're now realizing that they're about to become the do-nothing Congress. Same in our state. So my question to you, if elected, when you come back in 2 years, what is the one item on your campaign pillar that you would have achieved? And how would you have done it? Dr. Williams.
Our country's in a crisis, so are there actually 3 things I want to accomplish? One is continue the work I've already done locally at the federal level to improve gun safety in this nation. Helped write and pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That law saved many lives, will save thousands more. Restore abortion rights nationwide. As a doctor, I've had to operate on women who are near death from reproductive emergencies, but I believe that all women should have the right to the full range of birth control options and abortion rights as needed. And lastly, I'm a veteran, child of a veteran, defending our democracy. The threat is real. These are the stakes in this race right now. So our democracy is at risk. And I want to do my part to ensure that we can defend our democracy, because my family has done the work to get us to this point. As many of yours I'm sure have, we need to ensure this democracy is preserved for future generations.
Thank you.
The 3 things that I want to get achieved on my legislative agenda, I'm going to do 3 because Dr. Williams did 3 as well. I think mental health reform is something that we can achieve now. Everybody has somebody in their family that's struggling with a mental illness. My brother struggled with a mental illness and he died due to suicide the same day I became an attorney. So that's a passion project for me. And I've spoken with Republicans and Democrats who want to get this done. So expanding mental health care access is key. 2 is making sure that we have a robust economy that speaks to people on the ground. So identifying legislation in the tax code that we can create incentives for VC firms and private equity groups to fund underserved startups. That's key. And I've talked to Republicans and Democrats alike that want to make this happen. Right. 3rd is pushing our climate solutions, our energy solutions forward. I think we're all getting to the point now where we realize our climate is dying, and the only way for us to continue living in this world is to make sure that we have a climate that is sustainable for human life. And those are the 3 things that I think I can get done and come back and hopefully tell you guys we got it done in 2 years.
Thank you.
So I would say, as the only woman on the stage, I would be fighting for the Congress to codify Roe v. Wade. I think that's urgent. I think we need a gun safety package that bans assault weapons. I think would be the main thing that we need there, plus promoting the community violence intervention programs that Moms Demand Action approaches. And I would say my 3rd thing, because we are all going with the 3 things, it's kind of a theme here, would be to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed. That's so critical for our democracy, and so those would be the things that I would be stressing.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to go with 4 things if I So first, gun safety. I want to enact a no gun purchase list. If you pose a mental health risk to yourself or others, then that list with still preserving your due process rights. Next one is my no vouchers for private schools. So if any state gives vouchers to private schools, we will take almost their $2,000 in federal money and reallocate that directly to the public schools here in Texas. That's number 2. Number 3, insurance for gun safety. If you are a homeowner or a renter, just like you get asked, do you have any pets? That is a law that I want to enact for insurance companies to ask that question. Number 4. No, okay.
Thank you. Phil.
The first order of business is to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. In conjunction with that, we have to work on redistricting and voter dilution. That is critical. We are being attacked at every area of voting in this country. African Americans are under attack every day. We also need to attack the housing situation. We need to limit the investment companies on their investment in cities, buying these houses. There was a company out of Dallas that bought 264 houses in Las Vegas. That can move the needle. No one at the Dallas City Council or any other city council is saying anything about these things. And the final thing is HUD. They have to put more money into Section 8 vouchers. How many people you know that can't get a Section 8 voucher? Everybody. So those things have to be worked on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I understand that there's more money to be made in the fight than there is in the victory. That's why you don't see all the things that people talk about they want done happening. Personally, my goal is to attack poverty, cost of living, wages, through a number of different routes, going after institutional investors that are buying up the housing market, living wage. $15 an hour wasn't enough in 2016, it damn sure isn't enough in 2024. And also covering up, sealing up the gaps in Medicare for our seniors and increasing Social Security payouts, because as the cost of living has gone up, those checks haven't. I'm lucky enough that I can help the people in my family that don't make it all the way through, but most people are struggling to make it month to month, so not everyone has that luxury. But those would be the things I would tackle. Thank you.
Thank you. We've come to that point in our session that we're going to present our closing statement. You have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Mr. Moore.
I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. Thank Mrs. Belt for hosting this event. Look, our country's at a crossroads, and we need actual real fighters who can go to DC and get stuff done. Now, I know there's gridlock between the parties, but I've actually worked across the aisle to get real legislation passed. We're talking about the First Step Act that freed thousands upon thousands of men and women from racist drug laws that were implemented in the 80s. Real legislation, real metrics. It corroborates the reason why I'm running for this seat. Now, the question that each of you are going to have to answer, because we all have the same platform for the most part. Who do you trust taking these issues to Washington? I look at it like this. We're all boats that dock, and we're going to take a message to DC. Boats come in different shapes and sizes, right? You got some cruise liners, you got some tugboats, but I'll submit to you that I'm the only battleship in this race. I'm battle tested, people know it. Look at the volunteers that we have, 80 and count, because they realize I'm a battleship. Don't put your message in a ship that can't make it to Washington. Don't put your message in a cruise ship that's only going there because they want to look good in Washington. Give your message to me, I'll fight for it, and I'll bring it back home. That's what you need. We're tired of timid Democrats going to DC not getting anything done. I'm tired of it. Me being a civil rights attorney, I told you this in the jump. I serve as a stopgap solution for ineffective politicians. I'm tired of being that stopgap solution. What I want to do is go to DC and eliminate the divide between us on the ground and the politicians in DC who choose not to listen to our concerns. My name is Justin Moore. You can follow me at justin.a.moore, and you can also sign up to be a volunteer at www.morefortexas.com. Thank you.
I'm Jan McDowell. I've really appreciated having the opportunity to speak with everyone here this evening. I would love to have your vote. I'd love to hear from you with any suggestions or questions that you have for me. My email address is jan@janmcdowell.com. Pretty easy to remember. I'm the candidate who started running for Congress when I saw a problem that needed to be solved, namely the income and wealth inequality gap. I'm the only one, I believe, here who didn't wait for an open, very blue seat to come available and think, ooh, there's something I want to get into. I've lived in the same house for 21 years that previously was in a very Republican district. In 2018, I came within 3 points of winning that seat, much to the surprise of the establishment all around. But I've been plugging away. I've been beating my head against a wall because I think it's that important. And my principles have stayed the same all along. I don't think that jumping in with gobs of money is the answer. I think this race in particular is all about the relationship with the community. I have been building relationships, meeting people, building trust for years now. I show up at everything. I'm not an expert at stuff. I meet people who are experts that I can draw on. But I think that all of the issues that we've talked about tonight, plus others that haven't been mentioned, are incredibly important. And they are all interrelated. And much of it comes to being recognizing that the people who don't have money need to be included. I'm Jan McDowell. I would love to have your vote. Please reach out. jan@janmcdowell.com.
Thank you.
All right, folks, here's the deal. as a royal cruise ship, look, I'm 54 years of age. I got experience. I've ran businesses since I was 17 years of age. Been a legal professional real estate broker in Texas, Oklahoma. I've owned 4 medical facilities. I have the experience to where I've written proposed legislation, submitted it to Congress people in the past. But when you look what's written on my website, where I talk about the things that I'm going to propose as bills going into Congress, I don't think anybody else have proposals written on their website. For example, I have what's called a PTA bill. We have to start at a foundational level. For example, if you as a PTA volunteer, if you go volunteer at your kid's school, you're gonna get paid time off for that 2 hours of volunteer time. Republicans have been outdoing us at the local and ground level. We have to counteract that. And that's some of the things that I'm gonna propose to do with my PTA bill. For example, they're using the immigration at the southern Texas border as political games to keep getting reelected. I'm gonna implement an immediate moratorium on the border until we work out real immigration reform and to protect dreamers, to protect citizens that are wanting to come over here to be citizens.
Thank you.
ZachRymanning.com. Thank you.
Felder.
The first thing I want to do is stop military-grade assault rifles from being in the hands of private citizens. That is not a Second Amendment right. That is just a cover for someone who wants to slaughter people. And the target usually looks like you and me. And so we have to make sure that that happens. Second of all, no one should tell a woman what she could do with her body. It's between her, her doctor, and her God. So government needs to be out of a woman's right to make her own decision. Finally, we must address immigration reform. I have no problem with immigration as long as it's legal. We need to put money on the border towns where we have service centers with wraparound services. People that have issues with getting into this country legally should have courts on the border. They should have service centers on the border so that their cases can be heard in days instead of weeks and months. Now, I want to pivot back to me. When I ran originally and won my seat in 2017, I beat an incumbent. I was outraised, outspent, outfunded 10-1. I won my seat. So money has a place in politics, but this seat is not for sale. There are 2 candidates that have huge PACs. I have to wonder, what did they promise the people in those PACs, what they would do for them? Take a look at the candidates and what's behind them. So hopefully I have resonated with you tonight. Look me up. My name is Kevin Felder. Kevin Felder for Congress.com. Thank you. Please vote.
Thank you. Christopher Panayiotou.
My name is Chris Panayiotou. I'm the working class candidate in this race. 35 years in the community. I have skin in the game. If it was any other district, I wouldn't run for it because I believe in community advancement, not career advancement. I'm a grassroots campaign, and I believe that if we don't go back to the roots of the Democratic Party representing working class people, we'll see more and more of these seats flip red. There are a lot of things that have been discussed tonight. We agree on a lot of things. I believe my views are a lot bolder. I'm going to Washington to be a thorn in the side of the powerful. And when we realize that our neighbors are not the problem, but the people who run the show are, we'll be a lot better off. They'll divide us every which way but class, because they know if they divide us by class, the pitchforks and torches are coming. For more on my candidacy and my platform, you can go to chrisp4congress.com. My socials are chrisp4congress on Twitter/X. It's the number 4 because of character limitations. But I look forward to engaging with every one of you, and I look forward to being your congressman. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Williams?
Well, as a former Air Force officer, I don't know how I feel about Justin Moore with all these Navy references. I take a little bit of offense to that. But this is important because as an Air Force officer, I learned about service before self. That was a value I internalized, and something that was modeled by my father. And I learned about justice from my mother, who marched for civil rights. And that's what's bringing me to this race, right? I'm leaving my career as a doctor to do something bigger for humanity, for this community. I've just seen enough. As a trauma surgeon, I've had to walk into too many rooms to tell parents about the deaths of their children. As a doctor who's chosen to work at safety net hospitals to serve the underserved, patients coming to me telling me that they're rationing their insulin, but I have to amputate their legs now. Rolling back on abortion rights. And we know that when we take away health care from people, those that suffer the most are communities of color. And ongoing threats to our democracy, we fought so hard to get where we are, we cannot let that unwind now. So that is why I'm running. That is why I'm putting my name in this race. I live in East Dallas with my wife and daughter. This community means something to us, and I would feel honored and proud to represent you all in Congress. So that's why I ask you to join me in this fight, okay? Join me, because together we can defeat the gun lobby, so none of us has to live in fear of mass shootings. We can restore abortion rights nationwide and codify Roe v. Wade. We can lower healthcare costs, so no one has to choose between buying bread and buying their medications. And we can defend our democracy, because if you believe in the greatness of America like I do, you would work to preserve our democracy, not destroy it. Join me, drbrianwilliamsforcongress.com. It's a mouthful, I know. There are a lot of Brian Williams out there, so I had to get one that's worked for this race. Join me, and I'm excited to have your vote and work with you to move this what we need forward in District 32. Thank you.
Hold on. Let's see. All right, before we close out, before we give our panelists a round of applause for their commitment to be before you, we have a message from former Mayor Pro Tem, representing District 3, Mr. Casey Thomas.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. First of all, let's give a round of applause for our moderator, Eric Wilson. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job at all. And so I was asked by Ms. Bell to talk about the importance of taking action. Before I do that, what I want to say is each of these candidates, every candidate that you've seen here, there's only going to be one person that's going to get elected. But I want to commend everybody for taking having the courage to run for office. That's really, really important to have the courage to do that. But it's only one person in every race that you saw here tonight that's going to be elected. So my charge to each one of you is don't disappear. Community needs you. It's knowledge that you gain by going through this process that can be helpful to the community. You've made a lot of promises. Don't let those promises end, because if you don't, we can. Make sure that you continue to be a resource to the community. And the charge of action for the community, for those who are watching and those who are here, is simply this. We have a responsibility. We actually have two responsibilities to every elected official: to hold them accountable and to support them. The work doesn't end on March the 5th. The work doesn't end on November the 5th. As a matter of fact, the work begins for us on that day. One of the biggest mistakes that was made was a lot of people were excited about the election of President Barack Obama. Made history. But many people also abandoned him once he was elected. They thought it was his job to do all of these things. It's our job to support our candidate. And so if you are committed to taking action, we've got a lot of things that are going on now at our state level, our state board level, a lot of things that are going on in our country. We can begin to take action. So this is a call to action. If you are committed to doing the work, then we ask you before you leave, sign up. We have a call to action sign up sheet right outside. Sign up, put your name, your email address. There are a number of things that are happening. We need to have an army, a grassroots army of individuals who are committed to support our candidates, to support our elected officials, and also to hold them accountable. The only way this city, this state, and this nation is going to change is it's going to be up to us. Thank you.
And with that, let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank them. And you are dismissed. I want to thank each and every one of you all for coming out tonight. Hopefully you learned something, you were educated, and you were motivated to do more, be more, so that we all can benefit. Have a good night.
See you next Monday.
See you next Monday.